Welcome to the third and final day of Kirloskar Vasundhara Ramnadi festival. Sant Jnaneshwar wrote several decades ago in the Jnaneshwari, Nagarechi Ratsavi, Jalashay Nirmavi, Mahavane Lavavi, Nanavidha. So many years ago, he also saw the need and importance of having natural spaces and resources for the well being of humanity. We can still certainly bring this into our lives by preserving and restoring the existing natural heritage like the Ramnadi. Yesterday, we saw examples of interventions done for the Ramnadi. On the final day of the festival, you will see a few more to maintain a healthy river ecosystem. The Waterman of India, Dr. Rajendra Singh Rana, is a strong advocate of action for rivers, which involves an ecological approach and community participation. While Dr. Singh is an Ayurvedic medicine graduate and a postgraduate in Hindi literature, his calling has been the river and water issues across the country. He was awarded the Stockholm Water Prize in 2015 and the Raymond Magsaysay Award for Community Leadership in 2001. He still tirelessly leads the Rashtriya Jal Biradri, the national network working for the restoration of rivers of India, and is the chairman of Tarun Bharat Sangh. He brings us a message of hope, encouragement, and action for the Ramnadi.
किर्लोस्कर वसुंधरा रामनदी फिल्म फेस्टिवल के अवसर पर मैं ये चाहता हूँ कि नदी के दोनों तरफ का समाज, हमारा राज्य और औद्योगिक घराने, विद्यार्थी सब मिलकर अपनी इस 20 किलोमीटर नदी को पुनर्जीवित करें। ये जो पूना की राम नदी है, कुल 20 किलोमीटर लंबी है। इसको पुनर्जीवित करना, शुद्ध सदा नीरा बनाना बहुत ज़रूरी है। मैं जानता हूँ कि राम नदी को पुनर्जीवित करने की चर्चा बहुत दिनों से चल रही है और वो उस रास्ते पर है भी कि वो नदी जल्दी से ठीक हो सकती है, क्योंकि इसकी बीमारी उतनी भयानक नहीं है। अभी राम नदी आईसीयू में भर्ती नहीं है। अभी राम नदी एक जीवित नदी है, बीमार है, उसको ठीक करने की ज़रूरत है। इसलिए इस नदी को सब मिलकर ठीक करें और ये नदी जल्दी ठीक हो जाएगी तो देश की दूसरी नदियों में भी इस तरह के पुनर्जीवन का, नदी पुनर्जीवन का काम शुरू होगा। ये जो फिल्म फेस्टिवल है, इस फिल्म फेस्टिवल में राम नदी को तो दिखाना ही चाहिए, लेकिन यहाँ जो महाराष्ट्र में आओ नदी को जाने का जो कार्यक्रम है उसके साथ भी इस काम को जोड़ना चाहिए, जिससे महाराष्ट्र में नदियों के प्रति एक चेतना जगे। और ये जो चेतना है ये नदियों के साथ हमारा दिल दिमाग जोड़ेगी, और जब हमारा दिल दिमाग नदियों के साथ जुड़ेगा तभी भारत की नदियाँ, महाराष्ट्र की नदियाँ, पूना की नदियाँ शुद्ध सदा नीरा बनेंगी। नदियों की सेहत ठीक होगी तो नदियों के किनारे रहने वाले समाज की सेहत भी ठीक होगी। और ख़ासकर युवाओं को यदि स्वस्थ रहना है तो अपनी नदियों को स्वस्थ रखने के काम में जुटना चाहिए। शिक्षकों को, विद्यार्थियों को, सबको इस काम में लगने की ज़रूरत है। देखिए, मैं राम नदी पर 15 साल पहले गया था। तभी नदी की ज़मीन का अतिक्रमण और इस नदी का जो प्रदूषण है वो भयानक है, और इस नदी के जल का जो शोषण है, ये तीनों संकट इस नदी पर हैं। उस वक्त भी कुछ लोगों ने नदियों को, खासकर राम नदी को अतिक्रमण मुक्त करने के लिए बहुत कोशिशें की थी। मैं जानता हूँ कि राम नदी को अतिक्रमण मुक्त करने के लिए अदालत में भी लोग गए, लेकिन ये जो अतिक्रमण है ये तब तक नहीं रुकेगा जब तक नदियों की ज़मीन की पहचान, उनका सीमांकन और उनका चिन्हीकरण नहीं होगा। नदियों की ज़मीन का आइडेंटिफिकेशन, डिमार्केशन और नोटिफिकेशन फर्स्ट प्रायोरिटी है, क्योंकि जब तक लोगों को नदी की ज़मीन पता नहीं चलेगी तब तक लोग ऐसे ही जो रियल इस्टेट है, जो कब्जा करने वाले लोग हैं, वो नदियों की ज़मीन पर कब्जा करते रहेंगे। इसलिए मुझे लगता है कि राम नदी की ज़मीन का इस नदी की ज़मीन तीन तरह की है। एक है ब्लू जोन जहाँ नदी बहती है, दूसरी है ग्रीन जोन जहाँ फ्लड के दिनों में पानी आता है, और तीसरी है रेड जोन जहाँ हाई फ्लड लेवल होता है तब पानी आता है। तो ये तीनों तरह की ज़मीन पर अतिक्रमण, प्रदूषण जो बढ़ रहा है, इसको रोकने के लिए यहाँ के समाज को खड़ा होना चाहिए। और ये यदि इस छोटी सी नदी पे ये काम सफलतापूर्वक होता है तो फिर यहाँ से सीखकर लोग दूसरी नदियों पर भी ये काम करेंगे। इसलिए इस राम नदी के फिल्म उत्सव में मैं सबसे यही कहूँगा, नदियों को पुनर्जीवित करने की फिल्म बननी चाहिए। ये नदी अतिक्रमण, प्रदूषण और जल के शोषण मुक्त हो। इस नदी का जल पर्यावरणीय प्रवाह के साथ बहता रहे, इस नदी की ज़मीन नदी को मिल जाए और इसमें पड़ने वाले गंदे नाले रुक जाएं। बस यही इस फिल्म फेस्टिवल में से चेतना और ऊर्जा निकलनी चाहिए, ऐसा मेरा आशीर्वाद है। ये जो फिल्म फेस्टिवल है, ये फिल्म फेस्टिवल नदियों के साथ लोगों का मन मानस जोड़ने में सफलता प्राप्त करेगा, ऐसी मेरी शुभकामना और बधाई कि ये अच्छा काम है। किर्लोस्कर वसुंधरा ये जो नदियों के लिए फिल्म फेस्टिवल कर रहा है, इससे एक नई तरह की चेतना जगेगी और लोगों का नदियों के साथ जुड़ाव होगा।
Faith is a powerful, fundamental emotion. Having faith is like having a shining light to guide you to a new tomorrow. On the banks of the Ramnadi today, I am standing in the shadow of a structure that is built on at least 900 years of faith. The Someshwar temple, dedicated to Mahadev or Shiva, the Hindu deity of destruction, creation, and protection. A story handed down through the generations paints a vivid picture of the discovery of the Shivling, which is now ensconced in the womb of this black stone structure. A herder observed a cow sprinkling its milk on an anthill. When he investigated the cow's odd behavior, he found a Shivling buried in the anthill. The emergence of the Shivling in this manner is called Swayambhu, and such a finding is considered extremely powerful. This structure of the Someshwar temple is possibly over 900 years old. The temple is made in the Hemadpanthi style of architecture, which employs the extensive use of black igneous basalt rock called Kala Pashan in Marathi. The Hemadpanthi building style was formed during the 13th century and incorporated locally available black stone and lime. Kala Pashan is formed over thousands of years of volcanic activity and has now become a part of our story too. Incidentally, the area the temple is located in is also known as Pashan.
राम नदीच्या काठी एक कुंड आहे, कुंडाच्या काठी हे सोमेश्वर मंदिर बसलेलं आहे। असं ज्या नदीच्या काठी कुंड आहे आणि ज्या ठिकाणी मंदिर आहे, अशा क्षेत्राला श्री क्षेत्र संबोधलं जातं। आणि हे श्री क्षेत्र सोमेश्वरचा इतिहास सुमारे इसवी सन 900 सालापासूनचा इतिहास, 900 साली यादव कालांमध्ये मधील हे मंदिर आहे। हे पुण्यातलं सर्वात प्राचीन मंदिर, 1200-1300 वर्षापूर्वीचं मंदिर हे शिवमंदिर आहे असं म्हटलं तर काही चुकीचं होणार नाही।
After some digging, the temple committee realized that Jijabai, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj's mother, restored the temple around 1640 to 1650. She often brought young Chhatrapati Shivaji to the temple, and so this area was also known as Jijapur.
इतिहास मिळाला आहे आम्हाला की जिजाबाई शिवाजी महाराज लहान असताना दर्शनाला त्यांना इथे घेऊन येत होत्या आणि त्यांनी त्यावेळी जे पडझड झाली मंदिराचे त्यावेळी त्यांनी जीर्णोद्धार केलेला आहे अशी थोडक्यात माहिती आम्हाला मिळालेली आहे. आणि त्याच्यानंतर आम्ही 1978 सालापासून या मंदिराचं जीर्णोद्धाराचं काम करत आहोत.
The temple premises houses a tomb dedicated to Chhatrapati Shivaji's finance minister, Hanumante. Over the years, the Someshwar temple has been taken care of and restored with great faith and love. The spacious, clean premises is a testimony to people's dedication towards their God and his home. The area around the temple is also spacious, unaffected much by the rapid pace of urbanization. The Someshwar Devasthan Trust has records mentioning Mughal Bengal's general Shaiste Khan's attempts to destroy the temple. When he realized his folly, he built a Sabha Mandap to atone for his actions. Then, in the late 18th century, the spiritual teacher Shivram Bhatt Chitrav Swami gave a bullock cart full of gold coins to Nana Sahib Peshwa to be used to renovate the Someshwar temple. The premises also has a samadhi dedicated to Shivram Bhatt Chitrav Swami. The 3.5 acres of this temple premises have smaller shrines dedicated to Hanuman, Bhairavnath and Shiva's younger son Ganpati. The temple of Padmavati, the goddess of fulfillment, is only a few feet away. The 40-foot Deepmala near the temple is lit on special occasions. The premises also has a small museum which displays temple records in the Modi script, which was used by officials to write in shorthand. The 12 Jyotirlinga temples spread throughout India are the holiest among Shiva's temples. An ode to these temples is built right here inside the Someshwar temple. Visiting the temple is an important part of the daily routine for many who live in its vicinity. Every Monday, hundreds of devotees throng to the Someshwar temple and this crowd swells to lakhs on Mahashivratri. Steep steps lead to the inner sanctum of the temple, which houses the revered Shivling. On a slow weekday morning, one can really find peace in this temple and under the peepal trees in the compound, all only half a kilometer from the busy Baner road with its hustle and bustle of urban life. Don't we live a life of contradictions? So does Shiva, who is truly a god of polar opposites. In one moment, he could be the destroyer of the universe, and in the other, the savior who drank the deadly poison that emerged from the Samudra Manthan. I can't help but see the similarities in the characteristics of Shiva and a river, a creator and a destroyer through various seasons, sensual, calm, yet wild, dancing through the changing terrain and now absorbing all the poison we create. Shiva, after all, is, for you and me who are so deeply invested in rivers, the god who wove the Ganga into his matted locks and brought her to the human world. While the river Ganga emerges in the high reaches of the Himalayas and merges with the Bay of Bengal, any river important to the region is often referred to as Ganga. And here, behind me, is one form of the Ganga, or as we know it, the Ramnadi. The Ramnadi, like most other rivers, is not fed solely by the rains. Many little springs on the banks of the river keep it alive and maintain its ecosystem with groundwater. One such spring is inside the temple premises. Just like the Shivling, this spring is located underground, situated in a room kept under lock and key. A pump has to be deployed constantly to empty the water from the structure the spring is locked in. The water enters the Ramnadi. If you are a devotee, the Someshwar temple in Pashan will be a lovely addition to the places you can meet Shiva and find peace. If you enjoy heritage architecture and its modern forms, this premises certainly has a story for you. And if the river flows through your veins and into your heart, the Ramnadi flows by this ancient temple, softly carrying our stories and lives far into the ocean. Where there are temples, there is a shower of fresh, colorful flowers and other natural offerings. How can one manage this outpouring of Nirmalya? It would be a pity to let all this brightness go to waste. Enter Adif Pure Nature, a Mumbai-based studio which uses the lovely flowers to make vibrant clothes. Let's check it out.
Nirmalya is the Sanskrit name given to flowers, fruits, and other natural offerings that are made to Hindu gods during worship. Every day, in temples across India, devotees offer fresh flowers as a ritual. Since floral offerings are considered sacred, they are not discarded as trash and often find their way into the Arabian Sea. Every week, Vinod Mahadeshwar, who cannot hear or speak, collects nearly 150 kilos of floral offerings from the popular Siddhi Vinayak temple in Mumbai. Dedicated to Lord Ganesha, the temple sees more than 40,000 people and about 120 kilos of offerings every day, peaking at 200 kilos on Tuesdays. He separates the coconut husks and flowers and delivers the waste to a workshop located in the densely populated industrial lanes of Andheri East. Once here, Mukhtar and his eclectic and experimental team of 28 young self-taught urban artisans who come from challenging backgrounds in the city start their work of converting these colors into natural dyes.
मैकेनिक का काम किया हूँ, इलेक्ट्रिशियन का किया हूँ, सीलिंग का काम किया जैसे पीओपी लाइन, तो सब थोड़ा थोड़ा करके 6 महीना 4 महीना ऐसा करके छोड़ा हूँ। मोहल्ले में भी काफ़ी नाम ऐसा ख़राब हो गया था, जैसे कि बड़े लोग काफ़ी आने की बोलते थे कि बेकार है, वेस्ट है, तो काफ़ी डिप्रेशन में भी रहते। तो ये फारूक मेरा दोस्त ये काम करता था इधर पे, तो उसके थ्रू मैं यहाँ पर काम पे आ गया। फूल आता है तो हम लोग सुखाते हैं करेंगे तो 2-3 दिन तो हो जाता है सूख के, तो सूखेला फूल भी यूज़ करते, फ्रेश भी यूज़ करते, जैसा पाउडर भी यूज़ हम लोग पीसते भी पाउडर। तो अगर मैं तुमको एक प्रोसेस बताऊं जैसे कि स्टीम का, तो नॉर्मली हम कपड़ा लेते हैं हम लोग और उसका वेट करते हैं, वेट के हिसाब से हम लोग उसका आलम निकालते हैं, फैक्ट्री होता है आलम, और उसके हिसाब से वेट के हिसाब से पानी रख देते। पहला पानी में वो फैक्ट्री जितना 15% फैक्ट्री होता है उसको हम लोग उसमें घोल देते और टेम्परेचर दे देते 65 से 70 के बीच में, आधा घंटा पौना घंटा जैसा कपड़ा रहेगा वही हिसाब से हिलाते हैं। ये प्लेन का हो गया। अभी जैसे टेक्सचर करना है तो फैक्ट्री से निकाला, निचोड़ लिया कपड़ा, निचोड़ के फिर एक ज़मीन पे बिछा के पन्नी डाल के फिर उसके ऊपर ऐसी पत्ती आधे आधे में पत्ती रख के फिर उसको ऐसा फोल्ड वगैरह करके एक चेक्स टाइप का बना देता हूँ। फिर उसको हम लोग इडली का पानी रखते थोड़ा सा भाप के लिए, उसके ढक्कन खोल के डाल देते। कम से कम बताऊँ तो 15 मिनट एक साइड लगता है हीटिंग के लिए। इसका प्रोसेस पूरा हो जाता है तो उसको खोल लेते हैं, खोल के पूरा झटके के तो पूरा स्टीम आ जाती है उसमें, और फिर उसको धो के डाल देते हैं, ड्राई कर देते, सुखा देते।
Marigolds, hibiscus, roses and coconut all combine to produce bright, explosive colors that immediately bring to mind the hustle and bustle, the sounds and fragrance of temples in the city. Growing up in Versova on the coast of the Arabian Sea, Rupa Trivedi saw firsthand how the beautiful offerings were clogging the city's rivers and streams and littering its beaches. The toxic pesticides and insecticides remaining as a residue on flowers get washed away into the water, bruising the fragile ecosystem.
One of the days I had seen, it was a Ganesh festival at that time, and the Ganesh that was getting, the Ganesh Visarjan created the entire, the whole belt of the seafront in front of my house was all strewn with marigolds and all waste.
In 2008, Trivedi began approaching temples.
I went to Siddhivinayak and in 10 minutes they said, yes, please take all the flowers. And what do you give in return? I said, what do I give in return? Because I don't have anything. Finances are our permanent problems in life. They said nothing. You just recycle the flowers and you give it to composting.
The fabrics dyed here are then passed on to Rajesh Yadav, a self-taught master of patterns and cuts, and his team of tailors who convert them into scarves, dresses, and other tailored garments. Today, Adif Pure Nature produces 40 to 50 hues and 3,000 to 4,000 meters of hand-dyed natural fabric every month. In addition to flowers, they also utilize natural waste products like onion peel and coconut, organic flowers, and food-grade Ayurvedic materials.
The idea of recycle and the idea of sustainability, in what way can we impact the sustainability of our world? That was the idea. I mean, the idea did come from the environmental pollution that was happening in the sea. So the impact is, at least in a very small way, even if it is indirect, it is for the pollution that we are creating anyways, something sustainable.
Groundwater is a crucial source to meet Pune's rising water demand. In the next segment, Dr. Himanshu Kulkarni walks us through the global, national, and local scenario of this underground treasure, especially in the context of the Ramnadi. Dr. Kulkarni leads Aquadam, a not-for-profit knowledge institution and think tank working on groundwater since 1998. He is a hydrogeologist and has been actively involved in advocacy for stronger programs on groundwater management in India. Without further ado, over to Dr. Himanshu Kulkarni.
So today I'm going to take you through a short presentation on the management of groundwater in urban India. Now, this will of course focus initially on the global scene, then come to the sort of state level scene, national scene, state level scene, and then I'll highlight the importance of groundwater in the Pune region and more specifically for the Ramnadi River Basin. A quick introduction to Aquadam. I represent Aquadam, Advanced Center for Water Resources Development and Management, a think tank and action research agency that works on groundwater in the field, in the policy space, and in the space of action research and academia. We work through the model of partnerships. We work at the intersection of knowledge, praxis, and policy. And this is a map that shows the areas in which we have worked during the last 20-25 years, focusing on aquifer-based participatory groundwater management. And the colors on this map represent the different aquifer systems and the aquifer typology of India that we have developed through an experiential learning of our programs and projects. But I want to begin my presentation with showing you an image of one of the oldest wells, or perhaps the oldest wells, which dates to about 11,500 years ago. So groundwater has been used across the world for many, many years. I mean, wells have been in use for thousands of years. So there are three phases of urban groundwater management and governance, as I call it now. The first phase involves mapping. The second phase involves taking certain action. And the third phase involves governance, where we need some regulatory frameworks in place. We need sort of structures, institutional mechanisms to manage and govern groundwater, and so on. So if you actually look at the sector-wise groundwater usage across continents, then 1,000 cubic kilometers of groundwater is used annually across the world, out of which more than 50% is used in agriculture, out of which more than 70% is actually extracted in Asia alone. India is the largest user of groundwater in the world, particularly in the sector of agriculture. Out of the 1,000 cubic kilometers, the annual extraction of groundwater in India is about 270 cubic kilometers or billion cubic meters, which effectively means that 27% of the global extraction of groundwater happens in India alone. Now, India became the largest extractor of groundwater in the 1980s, and it has simply gone up and up and up. We use almost 2.5 times the groundwater that is extracted in China or in the United States. Dependence on groundwater remains hidden by the fact that the resource of groundwater is invisible, and we don't necessarily acknowledge that groundwater is used to the extent that it is in India. Rural drinking water, a majority, almost 90% of rural drinking water sources are groundwater based. 70% of water in agriculture is groundwater. Half of urban water supplies are groundwater, and perhaps half of industrial supplies are also groundwater. So much so that there are wells that are constructed in forest areas, which bear testimony to the fact that even our ecosystems and nature and wildlife also depend on groundwater. These are just some numbers on just the sheer population that uses groundwater. Based on all the previous numbers, 1 billion Indians use groundwater every day. 420 million Indians use groundwater in agriculture during at least one season of the year, and many such statistics. At the scale of the world, at the global scale, there's a lot of dependency on groundwater in many cities and towns, especially in developing cities that are growing from smaller towns to larger cities. The dependence on groundwater is particularly high. Now, what is happening in the cities and towns of India is the groundwater cycle, the natural groundwater cycle, gets modified on account of urbanization. Many problems on groundwater are predictable, few are predicted. And the major consequences of urbanization on groundwater is the trade-off between the reduction in infiltration facilitation surfaces and the leakage of water supply lines and sewage lines, which create a zero-sum game on what is happening to groundwater in the urban regions of India. Moreover, the contaminant loading of groundwater resources, of aquifers, is particularly high in the cities and towns of India. And I think these are two elements which prompt us to the fact of looking at how a town grows from a small town into the adjoining rural space where urbanization happens, new sources are created to bring water to the city, but the old sources of groundwater exist. Newer sources of groundwater are added as the peri-urban landscape evolves. And what the landscape itself does, it actually builds up on natural recharge areas which we neglect. So, if you now look at the division of towns and cities of India based on the underlying systems of aquifers, then that's the picture we get. Let's jump to the first one, which is where we are, Pune city or large parts of Maharashtra, underlain by basalt rock and basalt aquifers. Now, when we look at this typology of aquifers, we can see that I've actually put Pune in the volcanic aquifer systems, which is basalt rock. Now, when we look at the slice of Pune city, we are then able to identify where different aquifer systems lie. Where are the shallow aquifer systems and what's happening to the shallow aquifer systems across the city, the shallow aquifers in the core city, the shallow aquifers on the eastern fringes, and we are able to therefore construct a story about these aquifers. Now, I'll jump to the last part of my presentation, which is the Ramnadi watershed. A large part of the Ramnadi watershed is or lies in the evolving landscape between the rural and the urban. And therefore, if you look at this watershed, this is how the watershed looks like. And it brings water into the city of Pune. And this is Pune district. Again, like I said, large parts of Maharashtra, and again specifically Pune district and Ramnadi watershed is underlain by basalt rock. Now, if we look at the images of this region from 1984 till now, what we see is in the 1984 image, we see that this entire region is underlain by, this is the boundary of the Ramnadi watershed, is dominantly rural. You can actually see the streams, you can see the water bodies, and everything else is agricultural landscape. 2020, and you can see how, for instance, this area, this part of the Ramnadi watershed, the northern part, has got urbanized. There's a lot of construction here. This part is still pretty much rural. And then we jump to 2016, where except for the upper reaches, everything is urbanized or urbanizing. So the Ramnadi watershed itself now is almost 3/4 urbanized in terms of built up spaces. And that leaves us with the question on what's happening to the water bodies, what's happening to the streams, and more than anything else, what's happening to the underlying aquifers. So this is a map, this is a drainage map or a watershed map of the Ramnadi watershed. And as you can see here, there are water bodies and there are streams. Now, if I add another layer, and before that, it's a fourth order drainage basin. This is how streams can be classified in the Ramnadi watershed. It indicates dendritic drainage, which says that slopes dominate the hydrology of the watershed, but there are fractures in the earth that control the drainage portions, especially in the middle reaches of the Ramnadi. Just in terms of rainfall, in terms of Pune district, rainfall has been on the whole increasing, but rainfall anomalies, particularly the rainfall anomaly in terms of variability, has significantly increased. The next slide actually talks about the fact that this summer precipitation, the pre-monsoon precipitation, what here is called the Valvacha paus, has significantly decreased over the last 100 years. And this has enormous implications on the recharge to aquifers in the Ramnadi watershed or in the region in general. This is a geological map of the Ramnadi watershed, which also brings us to the fact that we can identify the entire aquifer system for the Ramnadi watershed, which we have done. So there are 5 aquifers that underlie Ramnadi watershed, and these aquifers tend to also get connected when you drill deep in one location. So for example, if there's a deep drilling in Bhukoma Bhugao, it is going to probably tap into aquifer 4 and aquifer 5 in addition to aquifer 2 and aquifer 3. And this creates a very different dimension to the Ramnadi watershed itself. And like I have said, aquifer 1, 2, 3 and 4, just in terms of what different wells can tap where, can also be understood through this aquifer map of the Ramnadi watershed. I'd like to close my argument by, okay, so how do we collate all of this information and begin to think about an aquifer mapping and aquifer governance plan for Ramnadi watershed? I have 6 points to make. One is, I think we need to come out with a plan for public recharge systems in the Ramnadi watershed. We need community efforts to integrate recharge and management and usage of water and even controlling pollution in the aquifers of Ramnadi watershed we need community efforts. We need public investments and acknowledgement by the powers that be, by the formal system of governance in the Ramnadi watershed. We need attempts at convergence between what people are doing on the surface and what we can do with aquifers below. We need respect for and the use of participatory science, and we need data and knowledge as decision support systems. All these 6 points require cooperation, participation, and collaboration between the residents of the Ramnadi watershed, the civil society organizations that are working in this region, government agencies, both in the rural and the urban space, and possibly research and academic organizations to all come together and develop a small river basin management and governance plan for the Ramnadi watershed, which, most important for me, is to integrate groundwater elements or groundwater management elements into this plan. I will stop here for the moment, and we at Aquadam are ready to contribute to the development of an aquifer management plan for the Ramnadi basin in partnership with the variety of organizations, including the residents and the stakeholders in the Ramnadi basin. Thank you very much.
One of the pollutants in rivers is chemical fertilizers and pesticides that leach out of agricultural fields. Ramnadi also has a few agricultural pockets along its way to the confluence in Barner. But there are certainly alternatives to these toxins which are harmful for humans and other plants, animals, and insects. Let's watch the next Eco India film, which explores how farming can be done without the use of chemical fertilizers.
In permaculture, we need to have diversified things. Like one function, multiple benefits we need to do. Like this is the lemongrass which we are talking about. Lemongrass is the pest repellent and mosquito repellent, and we can have a nice tea out of it. I'll make tea and give it to you.
Padma Kopula is a content woman today. 20 years back, when she and her husband, Narsanna, brought this land in the arid state of Telangana, it was dry and barren.
Mealybug is starting. White, the eggs. Yeah, mealybug.
That's where the seeds are there, parts are
there. Yeah. Only mealybug started, yeah.
Strong advocates of growing one's own food, the couple built their farm plant by plant. Today, Aranya is an 11.5-acre food forest grown completely free of fertilizers and pesticides and driven by the philosophy of permaculture.
It's a design philosophy, like natural orientations we follow, and then risk assessment from the winds, where it is coming from, how we can arrest them, where the fire is coming from, how we can arrest them.
We work with the nature rather than against. So that you have to take into account of all life system which has an exist on planet Earth. So you have to take care of them and you have to survive very amicably harmonious way of life.
This means every plant and organism that is part of the Aranya ecosystem is valuable and plays an integral role in its model of sustainable farming.
If you have a diversified cropping systems in your whatever the vegetables or fruits or anything, and if you can manage the soil health, I don't think so pest is a problem. So here we have not used any kind of pesticide or natural pesticide, anything. So like this marigold is there, there are so many flowers which can take care of the pest.
Looking at its success, neighboring communities were open to understanding why and how permaculture works. Farming had taken a different turn in the region in the last 10 years. Farms had transformed from growing subsistence food crops to industrial level monocrops, like maize for example.
Maize is such a thing they cannot consume. It's a hybrid seed and it can be feed to the chickens. Okay, so I am growing food for the chickens by losing my food security. So what kind of cropping system which the farmers are adopting? Amma bagunnava? Namaste. Manchugunnava? Namaste amma.
What this meant was that tribal farmers were facing a bleak future, one with a lack of nutrition and food security. But Padma and Narsanna intervened to help with their model of sustainable farming by tackling the problem at its source and bringing in women as partners.
All the women are such a strength you cannot see. Once you start convincing that, entire family get influenced. So the woman is the key in agriculture also.
Women are more strong at this kind of seed saving. They are so connected to the seed because there's a reproduction system they have. I think if you give one seed, I think they multiply the seeds. I think that's how they get more involved in the seed saving. I think slowly they got involved in the seed saving. They started distributing, getting them back, and they have made it a livelihood out of the seed. Is an ethical investment, ethical business.
One of the first women they worked with was Samamma, then a landless labourer who wasn't able to feed her children even a day's meal.
నాకు ఎట్లుందంటే నిజంగా పేదరికం ఓడగొట్టిన వీళ్ళు నాకు తల్లిదండ్రులు అనుకుంటా. ఇంకా వాళ్ళ శుద్ధి తీస్తే నాకు బాధ అనిపిస్తుంది, ఏడుపు వస్తుంది. నేను వాళ్ళ రుణం తీర్చుకొనలేను అనిపిస్తుంది. నాకు పెద్ద బలగంలో పెంచిండ్రు అనిపిస్తుంది. ఒకటి నాకు నేను ఎంత లేని దాన్ని ఉంటున్నో నాకు అంత కలిగించిండ్రు వీళ్ళు అని అనిపిస్తుంది. వాళ్ళు నాకు పెద్ద టీచర్లు కాబట్టి నేను చచ్చిన దాకా కూడా వాళ్ళ పొలంలోనే వాళ్ళతోటే ఉండాలి, నేర్పియాలి, మందికి ఇంకొచ్చిన వాళ్ళకి చెప్పాలి. ఇక్కడ ఒక పక్కన నా కుటుంబం కూడా వాళ్ళ లేక నేను నేర్పించుకోనాలి, ఇక్కడ వీళ్ళకి నేర్పాలి, అక్కడ మందికి కూడా చెప్పాలి అనే ఉద్దేశంతో నాకు చాలా సంతోషం అనిపించే నేను ఇప్పుడు
Working with Aranya and the other women in the area, Samamma today has a large plot of land where she grows every kind of crop her children need for a balanced meal, using a mixture of traditional farming systems and permaculture design. For Samamma and many women like her, this has meant self-reliance and lesser dependency on government rations.
If you can understand the philosophy behind it, if you are connected to the nature, it's very easy. When you know about the production system, how you can produce, then we don't need to bother about, we don't need to feel stress about. That is the security, that is the confidence levels is entirely different.
One of the tools in our arsenal to clean up rivers are floating reed beds. The students of H.V. Desai College implemented these contraptions in the source region of the Ramnadi. These beds can absorb toxic substances such as heavy metals, thus protecting the biodiversity that depends on the river. Let's take a look at this intervention for the Ramnadi.
must be observing this is a small lake which is there at Khatpewadi, which is the first stretch of Ramnadi. Since this river is highly polluted, so we want to reduce the pollution of this particular river by applying ecological floating water beds.
And we were given an opportunity to participate in Ramnadi Yuva Sansad, which is organized by Kirloskar Vasundhara. So on the account of the competition, we proposed our idea to restore Ramnadi ecosystem. So basically our idea was ecological floating beds which would enhance the ecosystem of the Ramnadi. We started with the project in 2020, but unfortunately due to COVID-19 pandemic, we could not continue with the process. We thought about it in between these 2 years, how exactly the model of the ecological floating bed would work.
So basically the making or the working of the ecological floating bed is done as follows. A squarish frame of PVC pipes is made and it is air sealed, and air is pumped through a cycle nozzle so that it would hold a lot of weight rather than the regular makeshift raft.
We have designed this prototype in the smaller scale first. We have tested it in a environment and according to that modified it and then designed this final product.
A hard sturdy net is put on the lower side of the frame, and then another net is put on the on top of it, and in between that bed of coconut husk is applied. On the bed itself the plants are potted.
Different plants like kardal, which is Canna indica, as well as second plant mainly khas or vada. Mainly kardal, it absorbs the heavy metals like zinc, nickel, chromium, lead, etc. So they remove the pollutants or heavy metals which are there in the river water. And secondly, the khas or vada, it absorbs organic substances which are present in waters.
We have planted 9 plants in total, and the roots of these plants have been suspended in the water. As the water and the BOD of the water was very low, so we have suspended the roots in order so that they absorb the heavy metals such as cadmium, zinc and nickel from the water.
So the future outcome of the ecological floating bed will be the oxygen demand of the water body will increase, the fish life will increase, and the pollutants that are currently in very heavy amount will also gradually reduce.
जी अवस्था रामनदीला प्राप्त झालेली होती तिच्यामध्ये काहीतरी विधायक बदल केला पाहिजे असं किर्लोस्कर वसुंधरा या संस्थेला वाटलं. त्यांनी पुणे शहर आणि पुणे विद्यापीठातल्या कक्षेतल्या सर्व महाविद्यालयांसाठी अशी स्पर्धा जाहीर केली. याच्यामध्ये आमच्या महाविद्यालयाच्या विद्यार्थ्यांनी जे यश मिळवलं ते कौतुकास्पद आहे, परंतु त्यापेक्षा मला सगळ्यात जास्त महत्त्वाची गोष्ट अशी वाटते या विद्यार्थ्यांनी काहीतरी वेगळा विचार केला आणि स्वच्छ हात, समर्थ खांदे आणि तल्लख बुद्धी असलेला युवा वर्ग हा जर एकत्र आला तर तो काय करू शकतो हे सावित्रीबाई फुले पुणे विद्यापीठाचे विद्यार्थी आणि HV देसाई महाविद्यालयाचे असणारे आमचे विद्यार्थी यांनी हे दाखवून दिलेलं आहे.
Once again, citizen action is helping tackle water scarcity problems, this time in Bengaluru. Simple aerators, rainwater harvesting, and recycling and reuse of water all play a crucial role in reducing tanker dependence. They are also taking into account groundwater recharge and reducing dependence on river water. Let's take a look at this successful initiative to save water and ensure a more secure tomorrow.
What happens when a city can provide water for only a portion of her residents? Can its citizens find a way to manage and protect what is essentially a community resource?
We need per year around 2 crores liters of water. Out of that, by recycle and other things, we are saving around 50% of the water. And our apartment is not being supplied with Kaveri water from government. This much amount of water had to be extracted from borewell.
Shivanand Prabhu lives in Bengaluru, a city where half its population depends on bore wells and tankers. In 2021, the city faced a shortfall of 650 million litres per day. And this is likely to go up to 1450 million litres by 2031.
We should not reach to that stage where the water is not there at all for consumption. So we have to start conserving the water now itself.
The question that begs to be asked today is, does Bengaluru have enough water for its 14 million residents?
The calculation of the requirement of a metropolitan city is using certain standards which I think are outdated. So for example, we now calculate at 200 litres per capita per day. But most European cities now aim for 100 litres per capita per day. If you take that figure, Bangalore has sufficient water. It gets 1,450 million litres from the Kaveri for a 14 million population. And it gets a supplement of between 500 to 600 million litres per day from groundwater. So there's actually no scarcity of water resources. It's a question of getting some water for all and making sure that water distribution systems are more equitable and just. Citizens should become aware of the various ways that they can impact water positively. One of them, of course, is to use it wisely and carefully, but the other is not to pollute it at all.
Back at Century Saras apartments, the residents were faced with a critical question. How does one reduce their dependence on groundwater, a dwindling resource? And more importantly, how can one help make Bengaluru a water-positive city?
Our basic concentration was on water conservation. We found that the water which is used in apartments, individual apartments, is being wasted.
The residents reached out to the World of Waters, a citizen action forum focused on water conservation. With the help of WOW, a range of water measures were implemented. All taps were fitted with aerators that reduced the flow of water by 80%. A rainwater harvesting system was set up to take care of a month's worth of water needs. Sewage was recycled for use in toilets and gardening, and it all added up.
It comes to around 1 crore litre of water. So this much water we could save in our apartment. That means 1 crore litre of water we stopped extracting from the borewell.
While the quantum of water saved was commendable, as the citizens found out along the way, there was more to be done for a city that was dependent on groundwater.
This rainwater, what falls on our terrace, has been directed through pipelines to the ground floor, and from there excess water other than drinking purpose, we are diverting it to rainwater harvesting wells there. There are total number of 8 wells under the driveway. and this recharges the groundwater table. It may not be useful for our purpose, but it will definitely be useful for our groundwater level maintenance of Bangalore as a whole.
For Dr. Hariharan, understanding the water economy has been an obsession since the late 80s. After spending 3 decades as an environmental economist and a green builder, he founded World of Waters Forum to enable conversations about water.
What is the idea? To bring in lay people, housewives, physicians, chartered accountants, anybody who is concerned about his or her city and who wants to see if he or she can make some change happen, while they all understand that there is a crisis on water.
World of Waters aims to enable citizens to implement water conservation solutions through fortnightly meetings. Since its inception in 2020, the forum has reached 50,000 people, and these conversations have resulted in 500 crore litres of water saved in Bengaluru in a year. These savings are largely enabled through a 4-pronged process: sewage treatment plants, rainwater harvesting, smart meter installations, and aerator fitting.
Citizens should become aware of the various ways that they can impact water positively. Can we engage in community action in cleaning up our lakes, rivers, ponds and streams? All these are possibilities for citizens. Can we harvest rainwater? Can we get our children to be wise about water use?
There might still be a long way to go for a water-positive Bengaluru, but with its citizens understanding the urgency and working together, it could well become a reality in the near future.